Hello Year 11 students and all other students who are exploring York College's Taster Day sessions in January 2021. Welcome to our second Law Department Taster Day sample lesson. This lesson is on the case of Dudley and Stevens. It involves murder and a degree of cannibalism. I need to give a warning. In legal terms, we would call that a caveat. Beware. This presentation does tell a story of murder and cannibalism. It's up to you whether you decide to watch it. You don't have to. You can look at our other sessions and materials. You can look at the Introduction to Law presentation, or alternatively, the taster or sample lesson on police powers. The choice is yours. I also need to explain that studying law at A-level or BTEC does not just include studying crimes and dastardly deeds. It does involve an element of writing and learning content, just like all the other humanities A-levels. Sociology, psychology, history, RS, government and politics, etc., etc. So what is this PowerPoint all about then? Well, it's aiming to show you or teach you or give you a little flavour of what we might cover, learn or discuss in years 1 and or 2 of our level 3 law courses here at York College. So every lesson should tell you what its aims and objectives are. I'll let you have a little look at these and then I'll just give you a brief resume or recap of them. Here we go. So in summary, this lesson is going to teach you that judges in cases make laws as well as Parliament. It's going to explain to you what a criminal offence is and what a criminal defence is. It's going to introduce you to the crime of murder. It's also going to introduce you to a defence, the defence of necessity. It's going to tell you the story of a Victorian criminal case, the case of Dudley and Stevens. This involves shipwreck, murder, cannibalism, trial in the criminal courts in Victorian England. And finally, this lesson is aiming to get you to think about what laws should be based on. Should they be based on ideas of what's right and wrong? Should they be based on ideas of making society function? Or should laws benefit the majority of society? Have a think about it as we go through this PowerPoint and learn about Dudley and Stevens. So I'm just going to give you some background information to help you understand the case. First of all, I'm going to tell you who makes laws in the English legal system, which is the legal system and laws which cover England and Wales. Scotland has a different legal system. Here we go. So, laws are made in this country by Parliament and by judges in cases. The EU used to make laws which applied in the UK, but we are no longer a member. You also need to know what a crime is. We often call crimes offences when we're studying law. A crime or offence is behaviour, conduct, which is banned or prohibited by the state, and to which sanctions, penalties, also known as punishment, attach. Well, I've told you that necessity is a defence in criminal law. I guess I therefore need to explain what a defence is. The criminal law recognises a number of defences which a defendant charged with an offence or crime might raise at trial. A defence is the defendant basically arguing that there are reasons why they committed the crime, and those reasons mean that they should either be found not guilty, they should be let off or acquitted, or they should be convicted of a lesser crime or offence. So on this slide we have a lovely long list of the criminal offences, crimes, and the defences which we study in both A-level law and BTEC applied law. Here we go. Now that we've got the basic and introductory stuff out of the way, I think I'd better get on with the story of Dudley and Stephens. Are you all sitting comfortably? Then I'll begin. Ah! And now for the chilling tale, a little taste of criminal law, the tale of Dudley and Stephens. Sit back, listen and enjoy. Now you might be wondering why I'm showing you a picture of a little person in a rowing boat, rowing furiously, and a tortoise. Well, it's supposed to be a turtle. It will all make sense in a moment, I promise. Okay, you can tell I'm a lawyer. I'm warning you again. Warning, caveat, beware. This presentation does contain references to eating turtles, killing or murder, cannibalism, capital punishment in 1884. Just have a little think about what the punishment for murder was in Victorian England. Beware! Bad things do happen in criminal law, but you can switch off now. You don't have to listen. It's entirely up to you. Here we go. So here we are, Year 11 and potential new law students. I'm now going to tell you the story of Dudley and Stephens, 1884. Let us begin. So, imagine somewhere in the ocean, over 140 years ago. English sailors were on a large sailing ship which sank. These things happened in the 1880s. We were sailing all around the globe, transporting goods and people around the world. We didn't have radios or sat-nav. We didn't have motors on our ships. We were only just beginning to sail with steam. Boats sank. That's what happened. They got into trouble in storms. They hit rocks. They navigated the wrong way. And the boat in which Dudley and Stephens were sailing, that sank. 4 sailors found themselves adrift at sea in a small rowing boat for days on end with no food. They just ate some tins of turnip and they were able to catch the odd turtle. They had no water and there was no land in sight. In short, they were absolutely desperate. The young cabin boy, Richard Parker, became very ill. He kept drinking the seawater and was barely conscious. Now, drinking the seawater was a bad idea because salty water makes you more dehydrated. I need to tell you about Richard Parker. He was a young lad, an orphan. This was his first voyage and he was hoping to make a man of himself. I need to tell you, instead, he might have made a meal of himself. Wait and see. Listen on. So, the cabin boy is very ill. The 3 other older men, more experienced sailors, are wondering what they can do to survive. What do you think happens next? I want you to think. Pretend you're in the classroom. Shout your answer out to me. Come on, shout out. Yes. 3 others, the 3 older experienced sailors, which include Dudley and Stephens, they're 2 of the party's surnames, they decide they have no option but to kill and eat the cabin boy. Now, Dudley and Stephens wake up one day and they decide they're going to have to do it. The 3rd party says, I can take no part in the killing, and he hides himself at the far end of the boat under a coat while they kill Parker, the cabin boy. So, what else happens? Oh, I just need to ask you a quick question. Looking at the heading or the name of the case, what do you think the names of the 2 defendants at trial were? Yeah, you got it, Dudley and Stephens. Next question. What does the R stand for in the name of the case? The R stands for Regina, R-E-G-I-N-A. that means the Crown or the state is prosecuting you. So they eat the cabin boy, and I don't mean to be gory, but they eat the soft non-chewy bits and they have a drink. Don't think about that too much. Yuck. So like on telly, quick recap. Big sailing boat sinks in 1884 in the middle of the ocean. 4 sailors find themselves adrift in a small rowing boat with no land in sight. Days and days and days with nothing to eat and nothing to drink. 3 of them talk about killing the cabin boy. 2 of them kill him, but 3 of them eat him. And guess what happens next? You're not gonna believe it. Okay, let's have a look. So part 2, still adrift in the ocean, in the rowing boat, 3 of them eating the dead cabin boy. Just a couple of days after they killed him, would you believe it, they're picked up by a passing sailing boat. They're taken all the way back to England. What do you think happens when they get back to England? Well, they tell the truth. They say what happened. And they're charged with murder. Okay? They're charged with the murder of the cabin boy. 2 of them, the 2 that intentionally took his life, Dudley and Stevens. Now, I'm going to ask you this question before I ask you the final question. Would you have felt some moral compunction, some pressure to own up and say exactly what happened when you docked in England in the south coast? Well, Dudley and Stevens did. My A2 students, my second year students go, oh, for goodness sake, why didn't they just say he died and then they ate him? Because cannibalism wasn't a crime. Well, I think they weren't really criminals. They weren't really killers, but actually, in fact, in law, they were both of those things, weren't they? They'd killed somebody, and in doing so, they committed a crime. I think they thought that people might understand these kind of things had happened at sea before, but in English law, intentionally taking another person's life is murder. So, the crimes that they had committed, well, they were charged with murder. Cannibalism, it's kind of in the old law of 1884, around 140 years ago, wasn't a crime that they were charged with. And they raised the defence of necessity. They raised a defence of necessity which did exist in English law, and this defence was really to say we shouldn't be prosecuted, we shouldn't be convicted. This was essential. It was necessary. We were forced to commit the crime, the murder. It was the lesser of 2 evils. More harm would have been done by us not killing Parker than if we had not killed him. Essentially, their defence of necessity was if we hadn't killed Parker, 4 people would have died rather than 3. Now, the law wasn't very keen on that. So let's have a look at the next slide. Thank you. Here we go. I just thought I'd do a quick recap of the crimes or offences that Dudley and Stevens might be charged with and any defences they might raise. Because you are mature students, I'm going to let you just have a quick glance or read over this slide. I'm going to try not to waffle on and talk over it this time. So here we go. Oh no, I feel the need to talk. You'll see that the defence of necessity is essentially the defendant saying, you shouldn't find me guilty, you should let me walk free because I was justified in what I did. My committing the crime was the lesser of 2 evils. More harm would have been caused or done by my not committing the crime than by my actually doing it. Essentially, Dudley and Stevens were saying, Look, all 4 of us would have died if we hadn't killed the one man. So Dudley and Stevens find themselves on trial. This is a high-profile case, much written about in the newspapers in 1884. It appeared in the London Illustrated News, which was a picture newspaper that everybody read. So Dudley and Stevens are on trial. They raise the defence of necessity. The judge at trial said, no defence of necessity. It won't be available for murder. You are guilty of murder, so you must face the death penalty. Shock, horror, no. Now there was public outrage. The public were horrified that Dudley and Stevens were to face death by hanging. Oh no. So we have to know what happened. Well, due to public outrage, the Queen granted them, most unusually, a royal pardon. Just a quick question. Who do you think was the Queen in 1884? Well, it was Queen Victoria. She was the one who gave a royal pardon. Instead of facing death by hanging, Dudley and Stevens were sentenced to only 6 months in prison. So, important point to note, students. The judge in the case of Dudley and Stevens created a new legal rule or precedent, a law which was followed in future cases. That rule or law was that necessity, the defence of necessity, can never be a defence for murder. Now I'm just going to raise a little stretch and challenge point for anyone who's interested in this area of law. Another case called R.E. regarding capital A, conjoined twins from 2000 may have changed this decision a little bit, but you'd have to read it in detail or come to learn A-level or BTEC law with us and find out more next year. So on to the thinking or discussion part now. Do you think that the decision made in Dudley and Stevens, that Dudley and Stevens were guilty of murder and that no defence of necessity was available to them, do you think that's the right or wrong decision? Do you think that the law has to say that you should never value one person's life as more important than another's? Or do you think the decision was unfair and unrealistic, and that the people found themselves in a desperate situation? The decision is yours. Moral questions are subjective and we may all have a different viewpoint. Have a think about it. If you found this lesson interesting and you want to know a little more about this topic and the case, you could watch a video on YouTube. There is a Harvard University video on the moral side of murder. The link is attached, but again, it's entirely up to you if you want to watch it. Michael Sandel is teaching Year 1 philosophy students moral questions, and he studies and talks about the case of Dudley and Stevens. This only begins at 29 minutes into the video. If you want to watch it, it's entirely up to you. Again, the clip on YouTube contains references to shipwrecked sailors killing and eating the cabin boy. Yikes! Don't watch the video if you haven't got time or you don't want to do so, or you might find it upsetting. Thank you. Here are some additional YouTube clips you might find interesting and might want to look at over forthcoming months to research a little bit more about law. This is entirely optional. Normally, at this point in our face-to-face lesson, I'd ask you if you've got any questions. Unfortunately, we find ourselves away from college at the moment for reasons outside of our control. You are watching this lesson virtually from afar, but if you do have any questions, please feel free to send them on to college. Thank you. I'd just like to say a huge thank you to all of you. Thank you for giving up your time to watch this additional sample lesson. I really hope that you've enjoyed it and it's been useful to you. Well done to you all. All the very best, and I do hope to see you sometime in the future in person. Remember that we will have new student days, either virtual or face-to-face, depending on the situations later in the year, and that you can also attend any of our future virtual or face-to-face open events, details of which can be found on the York College website. Thank you so much. All the very best. Bye bye.